Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I want the truth!
Why don't you answer him?
Welcome to another episode of Objection, Your Fiction. Today, I am really excited to be joined by Stacy Spikes, co-founder and CEO of MoviePass, longtime innovator at the intersection of film, media, and technology. He has a long story career, leadership roles at Miramax, Sony Music Entertainment, Motown Records, and he's also the founder of Urban World Film Festival and the author of Black Founder, The Hidden Power of Being an Outsider. And we're going to talk about a few things today, but the reason we wanted to bring you in is we're a few weeks removed from the Oscars now. And one of the big stories was Ryan Coogler's reported ownership stake in Sinners and the deal he negotiated. And I want to get to that in a moment. Before we get there, I feel like MoviePass has kind of been around forever. Before I had kids, I was an avid moviegoer.
Right.
Still try to go as much as I can. So can you kind of like walk us through the history of MoviePass and like your involvement and what the current iteration is right now?
Yeah. So thank you for having me.
Of course.
So back in the mid 2000s, right?
Feels like it should be like yesterday, right? But it's a long time ago now.
Exactly. So we were looking at how could we make Netflix for movie theaters, right? So you subscription had kind of swept the media landscape. You had Netflix, you had your cable packages with your HBOs, your Pandora, your Spotify, so everyone wanted to pay one fee and have an unlimited, wall garden to go run around in. And so we were saying, well, there's definitely a lot of people who go to the movies. Can we do that for movie theaters and for cinema? So that was a simple mission. 5 years we went around and tried to raise money for it. And people were like, nobody would ever do that. Why would people sign up? And I'm like, there's 40 million people that go monthly to the movies. So finally, AOL had a fund, and because they got subscription and they own MoviePhone, they got it. It was like, so we were able to go live in 2012, believe it or not. And
AOL MoviePhone, that feels like the 90s.
I know, right? I know. And they were kind of on the tail end, but they got it. They got entertainment, they got subscription, they were inside of the Warner system. So it was like, yeah, they get it. They had HBO, all of this subscription world stuff, and subscription businesses are much better than businesses that you have to reacquire the customer every single transaction. Much better ROI. And so they got it. They came in as investors, and then True Ventures came in. And before you know it, we had this first little thing and a few thousand people, and you could pay a monthly fee and go to the movies all you want. So you paid $30 and you can go to the movies every day if you want. And within 5 years, we raised a total of 10. We then had an exit. So a private equity group bought MoviePass.
That was in 2017.
We started the deal in 2017, and it happened. It consummated in December, so call it at the edge of 17 and 18. And so one of the parts of the acquisition was the monthly fee was $30 a month, and they said, well, we want to drop it to $10 a month and add another 100,000 subs, and we thought it would take a few months. So we dropped it, and we added 100,000 people in 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
And
Did that come with like lowering it that much? Did it kind of narrow the scope of what you could see and when you could go, or it was exactly the same?
No, it was exactly the same. It reduced the income to us by 2/3. And it was really promotional. The idea was just, hey, we just did this merger. We got married. Here's your wedding gift, right? And so we knew that it was promotional, and we didn't want to expand it beyond that. You were going to add some people in, you leave them in for 6 months or whatever, and then you normalize their plan. That was the plan. And these guys were somewhat unknowledgeable about human behavior. That's a nice way of putting
Yeah.
it.
I don't even know if it was that nice of a way of putting it, but I think it's an honest way.
Yeah. And so basically what started to happen was you were losing $30 per person per month, and there was no way to catch up because their behavior stayed high enough that you hoped they were going to dip down, but they didn't. And so
I mean, you hoped as you added people, like the average number of times going to the theater would.
and there is a bit of a decay curve, right? You get something new and shiny. You're there every single weekend, even multiple times. You go see the same movie multiple times, and there is a bit of a decay curve, but it didn't dip where they thought it was. And we started to have some infighting. My co-founder and I had a 12-month exit. So usually when the founders, they have them step down over time, not they suddenly depart. Transfer of knowledge, skill set, and everything. And long story short, they said, "Isn't this great? We're growing so fast, and we were adding 250,000 new subs every month. But these people are never going to be profitable." And I was like, "Guys, you have to turn this off." And they literally said in the board meeting, "We bought you. You didn't buy us."
Were they ultimately looking for just like data versus looking for new subs? Was it more of a longer play or
No, it's kind of like back then everything was just scale and we'll figure it out later kind of approach to everything. And still that's kind of that way today. You look at things like OpenClaw, which has got the most, downloads of any software in history at its trajectory. What's the financial model, right? So it's get big and figure it out later. If you have a bunch of people, you're either going to have an advertising or a subscription model somewhere in there.
I know we didn't plan to talk about this, but now as we're talking, I'm kind of interested. Was one of the monetization, like short-term or medium-term plays to kind of, I would imagine I go with MoviePass to the theater. My friends don't have it. Well, we're going to go to the movies together. So like, I'm going to say, I'm going to see, I don't know, the Avengers, right? Back when it came out. Bringing 4 other extra people with you. You have MoviePass. The other people don't. They're paying normal prices. Was there some sort of like, okay, we could maybe broker with the theaters to figure out like who is bringing extra people? MoviePass.
We had a referral engine in the app.
Yeah.
So I could show you
cool.
a QR code
Yeah.
and it would click, and we actually gave you a month free for every person that signed up through you. So
I guess what I was asking though is like, if you're bringing extra revenue to the theater with you because you're a MoviePass subscriber with people that otherwise wouldn't come, seems to me like that was something that maybe it was in their heads. I don't know.
Yeah. So we did a double blind study with AMC. And
then AMC stole your idea eventually, right?
Well, we don't say that. They imitated us.
Okay. That's flattery. The purest form of flattery. I said it, not him.
Yeah. So basically we did a 2-year study, and we took the behavior of them on the AMC Stubs program, which is Stubs is just kind of, hey, discount on popcorn, but it didn't change. It wasn't a subscription for movie going. Mm-hmm. So you got to see what their behavior looked like, and then what it looked like after they went on MoviePass. And month over month, it increased their movie going by 100%. So if they went once a month, they went to 2. If they went twice a month, they went up to 4. So no matter where they were on the spectrum, it doubled their behavior every month. The movie theaters wanted to add one more time a year that you went. We were adding 1 or more times every single month. So the compound effect was massive. Person before MoviePass was bringing $120 a year. When you added up tickets and concessions with MoviePass, they were around $480 a year. So we had a third party verify the impact. And that, I think, was one of the reasons why AMC chose to copy it versus letting us be the source. Mm-hmm. And so after our agreement expired, they said, no, we're not going to do it. And then they went and created their own. But so back to the big narrative, the we started to infight with the company that bought us and say, guys, this isn't going to work out well. And they literally in the board meeting said, we bought you, you didn't buy us. And it just, the relationship fell apart, and they actually let us go. They took us off the board and they let us go early. And that was when everything started to crash and burn for them. And ultimately in 2019, they went bankrupt and closed. Then COVID happens.
No impact on the movie industry at all, obviously.
None at all.
That was like insular. That was like the one industry was protected.
Crazy. So COVID happens, and the bankruptcy, I want to call it department, but the area that deals with the bankruptcy in the state of Florida ended up putting MoviePass up for auction. Because it was listed under HMNY, no one was paying attention. No one bidded on it. So I went back and I bid on it. The company was valued at $500 million in 2018. So I put in the lowest bid possible, and I bought the company back for $140,000. So 2022, I had it back. And then 2023, we relaunched it. And so 23, 24, and 25, we basically were profitable with this new added, where there was tech we wanted to add back then, but they didn't put it in. So I put it in, and now it's profitable and runs at around a 30% gross margin.
That's a great story. And I want to get to where it's headed in the next 5 to 10 years. We'll talk about that at the end. First, I wanted to talk about the initial reason why we brought you here, and there's a lot to talk about. But obviously the biggest movie of 2025, even though it didn't win the Best Picture award, was Sinners.
Yeah.
I think undisputed.
Yeah.
Biggest film of the year, probably biggest film of the decade so far, just from like a pop culture ramification, the surprise, the box office, Tom Cruise eating popcorn out front of it and talking about it. Just an awesome movie all around. So the reason we want to talk about it is the deal that Ryan Coogler struck with Warner Brothers, which was a lot of things, really. He got first dollar gross, right? Final cut, final creative control over the movie, which I think worked out pretty well. Yeah. I actually, they should have released another version where he didn't have final cut, just to compare the two, to see like what actually would have been interesting, an interesting play. And most significantly, he'll own it outright in 25 years. So I guess first off, you have a lot of experience in the movie industry. How rare is this type of deal?
So just to set up what we're talking about here is, I'm going to give you different variations of things. So different animals in the kingdom. Yeah. So one is the studio has an idea for a project. Maybe Warner Brothers has Batman or Superman, and they have the IP. It's their IP. But they say, hey, we want to hire you to write the story, and we're going to have you do the screenplay, and we're going to have you direct it. So they're starting with their IP. It's not original. They're bringing you in as a work for hire. Right. And so usually those, you're never going to own that, right? Because it's theirs, and it's not something that's created. In the case of Sinners, this is an original IP. This is coming purely from the director. And this is a new universe with new characters. So they're talking already the Sinner universe, that they can do prequels. They can go, the brothers were off in war, right. And there's all of this stuff that you're able to do. Mm-hmm. The story of the Irish vampires, like they've already talked about all of this different stuff. So when you're bringing that much to the
end of the movie makes sequels somewhat difficult without spoiling it too much, but I guess
well, one of them's alive, so
that's true.
So you can run up to modern day, right?
And I guess the post-credit scene also allows for some play too.
You got a lot that you can play with. So when a director is bringing all of that, it's more likely that they can negotiate some version of that. So let's say sure, we'll give you your rights. Sure, we'll give you gross. But where those lines are is the big difference. So how much is the studio going to take up front? So even if they're giving you gross dollar, sometimes what they'll do is they'll say, yeah, we're going to give you gross, but we still have to recoup our cost. Right. We're going to put our recoupment in first position.
Which might never happen.
Right. We're going to put our recoupment in first position. So the production, the marketing, the distribution costs, we put that as a negative cost. And then sometimes people never catch up and the film doesn't make money. So it sits in this, yeah, we gave you those things that will resort back to you, but you still owe us money. Therefore, you're always caught in this thing that you're not yet free.
Right. And you don't have access to like the books, so like to fully understand whether or not
you can audit. You usually have audit rights, but you're a filmmaker. You got to have the money. You get there. They don't make you
lawyers, accountants.
Correct.
Right.
So on one end of the spectrum, you're hired, and it's never going to be you're a work for hire, and that's it. And on the other end of the spectrum, you're Stanley Kubrick. You are Steven Spielberg. You come up with your own idea. You write E.T. from scratch. Once the money
George Lucas is the most famous one, right?
Exactly. Once you get to a certain point, this is all you. Other parts of that deal, like Lucas famously held on to merchandise rights. A lot of people don't realize Lucas makes more money off of merch than he does off the movies.
Anybody who's gone to Disney World wouldn't understand.
Anyone who's ever walked into a toy store will understand, or a Halloween store. So what he made, he kept merch, and no one thought that would matter, right? And so that's an example of picking certain things and what you're choosing. Really matters. If you are, you come from music, like you want to own the soundtracks or the scores. And so it's all in how you think. You rarely walk into the room and just say, I want everything and it's all mine. And you don't usually have that power. So you do have a partner in the studio, and they're going to upfront a lot of this cost. And it's your classic, I'm going to loan you. This is debt. I'm going to give this to you. This is my investment. And I cherish your relationship. But I need to get my money back. And then so $1 is, even if we don't make money, you're earning off a gross. So that's unique. But some of the Miramax deals, a lot of them were, they used to call Harvey Scissorhands, because he would say you have final cut, but you'd be sitting in the theater and the version of your movie isn't what you did. And there were a lot of lawsuits on that. But companies like October Films and Focus and your A24s, they go, you got final cut. We're not going to touch it.
Right.
It's true final cut.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the relationships work. And as far as,
I guess those studios, they'll prioritize like finding the right people to ensure that like they trust who they're giving final cut to, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're betting on somebody, and you bet they know what they're doing. Right. Sometimes they have a following, and it's a creative endeavor. I mean, how are you going to tell a painter, no, we want you to put more red and put more blue. Marketing will say they'll lean on you, and so they'll do focus groups and stuff ahead of time and give you feedback. And if you're a jerk, they're not likely to work with you again. So it's kind of, you are entering a relationship that, sure, you got final cut, but we also determine how much marketing dollars we're going to put behind it. And if the movie is tracking bad and you're hard to deal with, and we think we're going to lose money, guess what? There isn't an obligation of how much money. They usually will have a minimum number of screens. So they'll say, yeah, we'll put you out for a week in 5 markets and, call it a day. So that relationship does have a balancing act, and you want to show that you work well with your studio partner. Like when Christopher Nolan left Warner's and he went over to Paramount, because he said, I woke up one day and realized I was working for a streamer because they were prioritizing their streaming window over the theatrical window. And he said, I don't want to be there. Christopher had enough in his contract that he could just walk. So that somewhere someone gave him some good outs that he had that power and ability.
Yeah, good lawyers.
Very good lawyers. It's those little details you think are never going to matter. I had that with my book. When my book came out, I had some suggestions about the cover. We did the photo shoot, and the publisher came back with this really bad looking cover. It was full body, and there's this shot where I'm standing in, and I was like, I wouldn't buy that guy's book. And it had green lettering, and it was script. Yeah. And I said, most books are a bust. They're like this. They invite you into this person. And I showed them Obama, Hillary. I showed them these classic books, right, and they were all this. Yeah. And when you're walking past a window, you see that person's face, you see their eyes, you can see the title, their name is there. And so they didn't agree, but my agent had worked into the contract. I had final cover approval. So I said, well, you can disagree all you want, but when you're ready, let me know and we can move on, because I'm not going with that. And they ultimately came around. And they ultimately saw that the choice I made was the better choice, because I know my community better.
So, getting back to Ryan.
Yeah.
So when he was, obviously Ryan Coogler's made some big movies, but not that many yet, right? Like I think this is his fourth film that he directed.
Fourth or fifth, yeah.
So how did he have the leverage to negotiate this type of deal? Like he's
Black
not
Panther.
It's just Black Panther.
You had Fruitvale Station. I think there was another one in between. Then you had Panther 1, Panther 2, right? So those are like the four.
Yeah.
Well, Panther is just so iconic and epic and did global numbers that were off the charts. Right. He's now walking in the room with that clout.
Best Picture nominee for like a Marvel movie. That's
yeah. Crazy. So you get, and then what happened with Chadwick passing and all of this stuff, it just became, and you had little kids in theaters going like this, and Halloween costumes and everything. So the social impact was huge, globally. And so that's how he got that ability to, with a original IP product that he was bringing to Warner's, which you're in a different family. So here was Disney, right? And he's stepping to Warner Brothers, and they want to, instead of him staying in the Disney family and getting signed and doing a deal there, he's probably got a competitive bid. I'm sure Disney wanted to offer him something, and he ended up with, a pretty strong deal based on that track record.
Do you think, of those three, I think there were more things in the deal than I just mentioned, but of what I just talked about, like first gross, final creative, ownership in 25 years.
Yeah.
What do you think was kind of the most difficult for Warner to part with? What do you think was the most contentious part of that negotiation? I know you don't have any inside knowledge. We're speculating a little bit, but
so there's near term and far term, right? So if the movie bombs and it's a disaster, no one's thinking about, here's your piece of trash back. We don't care, right? It's not gonna be part of our archive library that's gonna make us money.
But there's been so many like classic movies that did bomb in the theater, right? And then
but then they were huge, right?
Right.
So
and you would think that like that's gonna be actually more and more happen more and more in the future. Ways, no different ways people kind of.
So in the near term, it's, these are publicly traded companies that are judged by quarterly performance. So the people today only care about that. The library and what the archive does in its performance in the future, that almost is kind of takes on a life of its own, like Maltese Falcon, was a failure at the box
I think
office.
Shawshank Redemption was
Shawshank, Gone with the Wind wasn't, it had problems. So some of the movies that became classics, The Wizard of Oz, many of these huge movies weren't, but no matter what, the company's immediate view is we got to make money on this film right now. This needs to be a success. And sometimes you get the double win. It's a success now and it's permanent. Close Encounters, E.T., things like that. But that's what the company's more concerned with. So I think the sensitivity is less about what happens in 25 years and more like, how much are we going to be on the hook? Are there, I insist on it being on 4,000 screens. I insist on a $200 million marketing budget. Am I as the creator going after that? Or am I going after back end because I really believe in myself? So you started seeing Tom Cruise and Schwarzenegger going after gross on films. Sometimes they were doing deals that they didn't get money. They got a plane, So it's really, you can kind of craft it how you want, but it's all in the artistry of those super agents who are negotiating those deals with what's important to their client.
I would think, based on like what I've read about Ryan and kind of what the movie's about, that like the ownership in 25 years is very important to him, right?
That's exactly right. And so Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino, Ryan, there are many directors who early on fought for that because they believed in themselves. They took maybe poor deals up front. There were minimum requirements for marketing budgets, so if the studio wanted to tank your movie, they could get, they could do it. Less of that and more of the back end that they ultimately believed in themselves. So Rodriguez did El Mariachi first for $7,000. And then when they reshot it, he always had ownership on things. So he was able to build a studio in Austin, and these guys continue to work because they had smart back end deals.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? This is like shifting topics a little bit, but when Sinners first came out and it was doing so well at the box office, there was a lot of chatter in the industry that that an agreement like this would end the studio system. It was like the sky is falling type rhetoric out there.
Just
headlines.
Yeah, but these deals have been around. Like I said, I'm familiar with Rodriguez, Stanley Kubrick, Steven Spielberg, like Tarantino, Christopher Nolan. Yeah, it's when people when they prove that they have a following, that they can deliver, and that there is a track record of success, those deals are not rare when you get to that air, right? And when you get up in that atmosphere. So down here, it's rare. But as people climb up, no, people are going to get those deals. Like certain actors are going to get certain deals that they're gross because their name and their presence and them coming to a project is, adds value to it.
Yeah, it also feels a little, I don't know why it feels like this, but it does feel like things have shifted over the last 5-10 years where the creator or the original pioneer of like original storytelling is becoming almost as big a celebrity as like the biggest actors. There aren't, like, increasingly there are less big time actors and actresses. Like most of the big time actors are like over 50. You don't have a lot of like big time names anymore. And a lot of the names seem to be the creators of content.
Well, I think it's always been that way. The director, the réalisateur is, has always played a role, right? Even we go back to France in the early film industry, and you go back to all of those guys. So the director was always key, right? And the actors, I think there is an entirely new crop when you look at Zendaya, when you look at Tom Holland, when you look at Robert Pattinson, when you look at Michael B. Jordan, when you look at Timothée Chalamet, when you look at Begonia. I'm drawing a blank on
Emma
her name.
Stone.
Emma Stone.
Yeah.
So I think they're there.
Yeah.
Right? There's this kind of moment that you had the last generation, and then I think people shifted from filmmaking and creativity. It used to be everybody, you either wanted to be if you were in pop culture, you wanted to be a rock star,
Mhm.
or you wanted to be a actor or director, right? So pop culture. Then it became you wanted to be a tech bro, and everything shifted to software and writing code. And I think people lost the fascination with that for a bit. So there was a gap where people started caring about being Zuckerberg and being, that became a thing. Now you're seeing it come back that even if you have all that money, people want to be remembered and they want to be creative.
Yeah.
And I think you're seeing a resurgence of it because this whole new crop of stars is much bigger. Music, Taylor Swift, right? Beyonce, women having that kind of power, like Barbara Streisand and Cher and Tina Turner never saw the power that these women have today. And the actors in the deals, like Timothy's deal, he has a first look deal and he's a few films into his career.
Yeah.
So I think this has changed and it's come back. And I think there is a whole new re-love of it where our generation fell into streaming. Ooh, look what I can do on my phone.
Right.
And we fell into hardware. But this generation now cares about what they call IRL experiences. IRL is now more important. Were you there?
Yeah.
Is different than did you see it on your phone? If you want real cred, you were at the Taylor Swift concert, not, oh yeah, I saw it on HBO months later. So
Basically, just like if you were born 80s or 90s, just life.
That's right.
Just normal life.
That's right. That's right. But the IRL thing became more important because it separated. There was a point that everybody got to say, I was there because I saw it.
Yeah.
Now it's, I was there because I was there.
Right.
And that is now a differentiator that you started to have influencers. If you remember, after a band came to town and they played Friday, Saturday, Sunday at Madison Square Garden, it was, did you have your concert shirt on Monday morning, right? You had your black concert shirt, right? Well, then that said, I was there because the only place you can get that shirt was you had to be there. And I would walk down the halls and be like, yep. So this is the equivalent of that you're seeing a swing back from not virtual, but I was there.
Yeah.
And having your movie ticket that you went to see Project Hail Mary on IMAX opening weekend is a badge now. And so were you there is a return to that.
Well, I hope so. I want to make sure that we get to the current state of MoviePass and what it looks like in the future and the new project Mogul that we were talking about a little bit before we sat down to record, which I guess is the blend of the tech bro and the celebrity together, actually, to segue from our prior conversation. So tell us what Mogul is, tell us how you came up with the idea, and just give us a little insight as to what it looks like.
Yeah. So to set the table of kind of an emerging trend, there's an overall space that's called speculative entertainment. So to speculate, under speculative entertainment, there's really two areas. There's daily fantasy sports, and then there's prediction markets. And so the way of thinking of it is prediction markets is really your over under on an outcome. And there's one side who says, how many times is the president going to say this
the most
word?
Popular is Polymarket. Right?
Correct. There's Polymarket, which originally came out of the crypto space, and there's Kalshi, which came out of the U.S. market.
Right.
So that's prediction markets. DFS, which has been around largely since 2018, and has flourished with DraftKings and FanDuel. That is your peer-to-peer competing on what you think's going to happen with an outcome. And you're basically creating a team that you're picking players against another person and how those players perform in the real world. So what we did was we merged those two ideas. You have a virtual studio. You are picking movies, actors, and directors, and how your studio performs based on ROI in the real world, competing with my studio, is how we do that. Today, it's play money.
Right.
We will have real money versions and continue to have, play money versions. And that's the new direction that the company's taking. So speculative entertainment is projecting to be $250 billion marketplace by 2030.
Wow.
So it's a massively fast growing. What I see is it's the merger of social media adding. So right now people can go and do thumbs up, thumbs down, likes, dislikes, and there's no consequence. There's no, are you right? How well are you right? Now it's kind of like saying, I got $50 that says I'm right, that this is going to be hot, or this is going to fail, or this is going to go this way. And now that social proof has a monetary stake to it. So I think it's, if you imagine social media moving into a monetary space, that those likes or dislikes now have a value system that's very similar to a stock market, a daily fantasy sports, or a prediction market. That to me is where this is all going.
So what is, without, people should go, we'll talk about where the website is and where they can download the application at the end, but people should go check it out for themselves. But walk us through, like, if you're sitting down for the first time and you're trying to use this application and you're building out, I guess, your own studio, like, how does that look? What do you do?
So there's seasonal play. So we break up the world into two seasons, so summer or winter. So Memorial Day through till October, and then October all the way through till April is your two seasons.
So in one season you get the summer blockbusters, the other you get the holiday
and
blockbusters.
Oscars. Yeah, and you got the Oscar window. So basically you take the season, everybody gets $1 million. A movie costs 100,000, an actor costs 25, and a director costs 25. I'm giving you round numbers. There are different levels. So there's blockbuster level, medium tier, and art house. So my director in an art house might be 5,000, right? So, but I'm going to keep it simple for a moment. So you go and you take your $1 million and you create your own portfolio, pick movies, but you're not doing the movie off of gross. You're doing it off of ROI. So let's say I pick Wicked, and Wicked cost $200 million to make, but it did $400 million at the box office. So I 2x'd my return. You pick.
So it has nothing to do with the numbers. It's just it's the ROI percentage.
You pick Sinners. Sinners did not have the same budget, right? Let's put Sinners at 100 million. And it didn't open on 4,000 screens like Wicked, but let's call it 100, and let's say it grossed $1 billion, and it 10x'd its number. So if we were just competing with just those two line items, I 2x'd, you 10x'd. So it will give you a 10 times return on what your investment was. So the actor.
So is it basically a rankings of who has the most money at the end of the season?
Correct.
Gets a payout proportional to their.
Correct. So if we put money in for the whole season, the pot is going to go to the top ranking. So whether you say top 3 or top 5.
Right.
Now we can enter private leagues if you know that. So there's an overall league, and then you can do private leagues. So it's just our office pool. Yeah. It's our friends. It's the office pool. It's family members, and you can create these little things however you want. And that's the whole season. Now, what if I want to do just weekend? What if I want to do just a month? What if I want to do just the day? all of those, you can do those variables. And so we've sped up play from really slow seasonal play to moving it up to you'll be able to play against other people every day. So like, let's say I have a ranking of it's called a hype index. I have a hype index ranking of the top 100 actors, movies, or directors, and just the interest level in chatter that's out there. Well, if we are going to try and predict what the top 5 are going to be tomorrow, that's a 24-hour game. Okay. And we can say, this is what I'm putting on my predictions, and this is what you're putting on your predictions. Winner takes the pot.
Yeah.
But it's peer-to-peer, so it's like two people playing chess matches based on their knowledge and experience. It's not horse racing where
you're not playing against the house.
You're playing against each other.
It's basically
knowledge.
If you go to a casino, it's like blackjack versus poker, right? This is more akin to poker.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right. So DFS in America is largely legal. I think there's only 5 states that don't allow it, but there's 20 states that do not require a license. The house is really just holding money between two people and determining what is the outcome and how do you verify that outcome. And neither party can have fingers in the pie. And so all you're doing as the house is saying, okay, you guys are going to talk about who's going to have the best ROI on between Sinners and Wicked. Okay, I got it. And what's the cutoff time? Got it. The rules, got it. And then the house is just holding the money and saying, okay, we verify this and you're the person who won. So it takes a fee on that, but you're not playing the house like in blackjack.
Is this going to expand into like TV shows and streaming eventually? Is that the goal?
So yes, we think it goes all throughout pop culture, but the challenge with streamers is they don't report performance. You don't know how much it costs. You don't know how many people watched it.
You have the trendings.
You have trending, but that's it. So with box office,
which might be manipulated anyway.
And you don't know what's real. So with box office is measured. The number of trailer views is measured. Everything is precise. And that's what's beautiful about the movie industry. But with streamers, I'd say we wouldn't do that because there's no real way of knowing what's truth. It is whatever somebody wants to report and tell you is true. Like they'll say, this was our most expensive production in history. And then they'll say, we didn't spend any money. We're profitable. We did this on a shoestring, right? So the same studio, 2 different departments will give you 2 different answers.
Well, this is a really exciting development. It sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Where can people go to find out more about MoviePass? Where can they go to find out more about Mogul? What should they check out?
Yeah, 2 simple URLs. MoviePass is moviepass.com. And Mogul, just put mogul.moviepass.com. And just put Mogul in front of it and it'll take you there. But what we saw was AMC and about 80% of theaters now have a version of MoviePass. So we don't see that as a growth area. So when we looked at Blue Sky, what's a space that we could play? No one ever created the DFS of Hollywood. Yeah. And so we saw with that in prediction markets that there's a there. And the good thing is it's global instantly because these movies are released around the world and it never turns off. So Hollywood's on 365. And whether it's like Ni Zhao and Ni Zhao 2, which came out of China, which is now the 2nd highest grossing animation film in history. It came out of China, released in the US, and you can have a US film that's released in Asia. And so, but you can play it all as one big game, whether you do domestic or international.
Well, it's so cool. Once you launch officially, you should come back and we'll do a little test run of it and see how it plays. This was great to talk, and look forward to seeing what MoviePass and Mogul's doing in the years to come. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.
For more on all things real estate and the law, subscribe to this and our other podcasts. Follow Bergstein, Flynn, Knowlton, and Polino on social media. Subscribe to our newsletter and go to bfklawoffice.com. That's bfklawoffice.com to learn more.